Naessens show is on in five, four, three, two, one.
Welcome to the Phil Naessens Show. I'm happy to have you here. We are going to talk NBA basketball for the entire hour. Kyle McKeown will be here to talk fantasy basketball, Mo Cheeks getting fired, the Lakers fantasy options, and a lot more. And after that, Kevin Lipe will join us and talk about the rough and tumble Memphis Grizzlies, who've tumbled quite a bit this week. But up first, the Indiana Pacers played one of the best NBA basketball games I've seen in quite some time. They defeated the Portland Trail Blazers in overtime, 118-113. And here to talk about all that and more, please welcome from IndyCornrows.com, their managing editor, Tom Lewis is in the house. Tom, how you doing, man? Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Phil. I'm doing well. Good to talk to you again.
It's good to have you here. You know, I always make you lead off and listen to my boring intro, but I'm learning how to shorten it. I'm going to give you one of those snooze buttons. That's what I'm going to send you, a snooze button. But if anyone fell asleep for the Portland, Indiana game on the 7th, oh, Maron, you're not a basketball fan, you have no pulse, or you just worked 24 straight hours. Because that game, I couldn't leave the room, and I didn't have to work that night. And I stayed up all night watching this thing. It was fantastic, wasn't it?
Oh, it really was. It was a real high level of intensity and you know, not always execution-wise, but defensively, both teams were just really on each other all night. And, you know, it was not a game for the meek. And, you know, you had to be ready to attack at both ends to get anything done, and they both did. And, I mean, Damian Lillard was just sensational. And as was LaMarcus Aldridge, and the Pacers were able to answer and finally take over the game, you know, behind David West being strong, but also George Hill just having a career game, literally a career high with 37 points. But, you know, he was a man in that game because they got nothing out of Roy Hibbert and not much else out of Paul George. And with Lance Stevenson sitting down, I mean, those are three guys that you got to have something from at least two of those guys when they win, and they didn't need it, and they were able to hang in and take the Blazers' best shot at home, and it was just a fantastic environment there at Bankers Life Fieldhouse, sold-out crowd, and they were able to get it done in the end. And those teams have played twice this year, and both games were, you know, just epic with the home team winning. And really, I wish we could trade in, I'd trade in a Philly game to be able to play them again. But you know, it was just a great matchup. And Portland is able to attack the Pacers quite well, unlike other teams. And they're really good in the mid-range game, which is the best way to attack the Pacers. That's what they're going to give up. And Portland's willing to take it and run with it. And so it's always going to be a tight game when they play. And, boy, that was fantastic.
Yes, it was. You know, again, I've said this so many times that I probably should just record it and just play it instead of hearing my own self do it live every night. But you don't score points in the paint. You know, you just don't against Indiana. And Portland only got, I think, 24, 26. But it was that mid-range and those three balls. That's the Achilles heel of the Indiana Pacers. But then again, they're willing to let you do that and let you beat them from that area, right?
Yeah, exactly. And really, they did a pretty decent job of guarding the three line. But you know, Lillard and Aldridge in particular were hitting those mid-range shots. I mean, Lillard had, you know, contested shots, well defended, forcing him to fade away a little bit with a hand right in his face, and just money. I mean, it was impressive. He is just tough. You know, Frank Vogel spoke about it after the game, that he's such a shot maker. They knew he was going to get theirs. It wasn't so much that they were just going to try and shut him down, but instead they were going to force him to have to play the other end, and that's where George Hill came into having such a big night. Was right from the get-go. The goal was to really attack him at the other end and make him either defend or give up some points, and Hill was able to get it going and make him pay at the other end. So he was able to, even that matchup out, which is just remarkable with how well Lillard played.
David West was a beast.
He was. He's, like I said, it was not a game for the meek. And the two toughest guys in the Pacers locker room, without a doubt, are George Hill and David West. I mean, people might think that's funny to hear that about George Hill because he's not that aggressive sometimes and he's so slender. But believe me, pound for pound, he's a tough kid, and he doesn't back down from challenges, whether you're playing basketball or tiddlywinks. So and West, he was just strong, and I mean, he was sitting out there knocking down those mid-range jumpers like, he was like, I can do this all night, boys. Keep giving them to me. And he delivered time and time again, and again kept forcing their counterpart, Aldridge, and the Blazers defense to try and account for him, and they couldn't. He just kept it going all night.
The other guy that gave the spark is Russell Butler. He was tough, man. He knocked a couple threes down, and I was like, who is this kid? Where's he been all year?
Yeah, well, I mean, with Stevenson out, he slid into Danny Granger's minutes, basically. And he played, he's just been, when he's on the court, he's just solid. Like, he's in the right spots. He has missed some threes when he's played, but it seems like he never does. I mean, when he gets open, he knocks them down. Real efficient player. And, he's been around the league, been out of the league, has some miles on him and some know-how, though. And, he honestly wasn't in anyone's plans to even be on the roster at training camp, but he earned his way on, and throughout the year has earned his way into the spot where he is in the rotation, where he's that, third wing off the bench if they need it. And they needed it against Portland, and he stepped in and was ready to go. And that was, the first extensive minutes he'd played in a while, and he was really solid. So that was kind of nice to see that, that in a big game, in a tight situation like that, which will surely happen in the playoffs, that, you can rely on a guy like that to come in and be ready and stay ready and deliver.
Absolutely. He was fantastic. Now, Chris Copeland, he doesn't play anymore, does he?
No, he's buried. Really, after the signing, or when they signed him, I really didn't think they thought they were going to get Luis Scola. And when the opportunity came to get Scola, they picked him up, and that has kind of buried Copeland, even though he could play some small forward minutes, I'm sure. But the time that he had gotten earlier in the year, he wasn't up to standard defensively, and also wasn't, knocking down so many shots that you had to keep him in there. So he's just, basically fallen out of the rotation. Yeah, he's the type of guy, though, that you just feel like whether it's a little injury or something's going to happen in a one game or two games throughout the playoffs, he's going to come in and knock down 2 or 3 threes and turn a game or keep the Pacers going in a game. And, he's there. And, he seems to have a great attitude, always working, always, strong on the bench with everybody. So he's definitely a part of the team. He his teammates have his back. They want him to do well. So you just get a feeling that, he's that type of guy that's going to rise up and have a game, and maybe it's just one game in the playoffs, but if, one game in a playoff series is huge. So, that's kind of the best case scenario for him right now.
I watched him play all last season, and it was the same way in New York. He was in Woodson's, basically Woodson purgatory, and then
Yeah.
he came in one night and scored, I don't know what, 28, 30 points, and he just started killing it. But he doesn't play defense very well. He'll get better, but he's well liked everywhere he goes. He's a great
Yeah.
kid. So whatever, you know what? If I have to sit on the end of somebody's bench, wouldn't mind at all sitting on the end of an Indiana Pacer bench, especially when you're 39-11.
Exactly.
Now, someone asked me this the other day on Twitter, and I was going to just retweet you and let you do it, but I figured I would answer it and see what you thought when you came on the show on Monday. But someone asked me about the Pacers and are they done working? Are they done for the deadline? And I said, I don't think they need anything else. What do you think? Are they finished, or are they going to make another move before the deadline?
Well, Larry Bird always answers that with, yeah, if I can improve our team, I'm going to do it. But I do think he likes what he has now, and really, there isn't a lot of room in the rotation when everybody's healthy to add another player, and they are in it for this year, and you don't want to make a drastic change that's going to alter the rotation with the way they're playing right now. So something that would be rotation altering would likely have to move a key player who's been doing well so far, and then you're starting to really screw with what they've been doing and take a major risk. Now, obviously they added Andrew Bynum. It wasn't a trade; they just picked him up, and there's hope that he can maybe play that backup center role that Yamahimi has been playing. But there's also part of that, you hear some of that Bynum move was, let the players know, hey, we're all in it. We're not screwing around, and we're doing whatever we can to win it this year. And nobody's safe. There's no let up, and we're going to keep looking. Kind of a way to, keep everybody on edge. So, if a good deal, they could probably use a wing player, I guess. That Russell Butler role I was just talking about, or how he's so solid. Maybe they could use a guy who's a little more reliable or more of a dynamic threat to be coming off the bench. But that's not going to be easy to find with the assets that the Pacers have to offer, which isn't a lot right now.
No, I think it'd be tough to make a trade, and I think it'd be kind of foolish. The only way you make this trade, maybe, is if you're willing to part with Danny Granger, but he's been playing okay, and he's given him minutes when it counts, and I think that's important. Now, you got a couple games coming up this week, Denver and Dallas. Both of those teams, Denver is in big trouble, I think, and Dallas is kind of on the bubble. What do you make of this week, real quick?
Yeah, well, they really got to close those two games out at home before the All-Star break, and finish strong here. They had a little hiccup with Orlando, and they're running into a Denver team that is really hurting. They lost Gallinari, they lost Nate Robinson, and then it looks like Ty Lawson injured himself on Friday. So they're going to be maybe they're already shorthanded. They may be more shorthanded than expected. And the Pacers coming back home, they should be ready to roll. I don't see that being a problem, even though it is on the back half of a back-to-back. They should be able to take care of business at home. And same goes with Dallas on Wednesday. As long as they're not looking forward, that's always a danger with the All-Star break, because guys have vacation booked for a couple days, and they might have their bags packed and their mind a little bit somewhere else. But that goes for both teams. So there's no excuses at home. They got to continue to lock down the home court, and then, as David West says, they're trying to finish before the break strong, and then after the break they know that's when they start their march, and it's time to get serious about prepping for the playoffs and for a title run.
Well, I'll tell you what, they got a beautiful time of things as soon as they finish the All-Star break. Anyhow, great stuff. And by the way, Ty Lawson has a broken rib. He probably won't be playing Monday. Anyway, great stuff today, Tom. Thank you so much for being on the show. Good luck this week. We'll see you next week. We can relax a little bit and talk about the All-Star game or something.
All right, that sounds great, Phil. Talk to you later.
All right, Tom. That was Tom Lewis, and you can find him over at IndyCornrows.com. Coming up next, Colin McKeown and I will be talking fantasy basketball. And we'll be right back. You're listening to The Phil Naessens Show.
The Phil Naessens Show will return.
And it's the reason Al Gore invented the Internet.
After these brief messages.
Do you know your fantasy sports? Would you like to make money at it? DraftStreet.com and The Phil Naessens Show would like to help you get started making money playing fantasy sports today. And we'll even give you the chance to get started making money today for free. On me. That's right. All you have to do is head on over to PhilNaessens.com or visit the show notes for this show. Click the Draft Street image at the top of the page and start making money playing fantasy sports at DraftStreet.com today.
If you like baseball, you should be checking out BaseballPodcasts.net. It's one of the best places you can go on the internet to listen to independent baseball talk shows. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on our radio player that can be heard around the world. So won't you tune in and give us a listen at BaseballPodcasts.net. You can also listen to the great Phil Naessens Show here. See you there at BaseballPodcasts.net.
Are you looking to escape into lands full of fantasy, drama, and adventure? If you are, why not try author Kay Medder's books? Their journey begins, Journey to Freedom, The Night of the Dixie Wilds, On Top of the Rainbow, and Transcendence will get you there. Kay Medder's books are available as an ebook or in paperback, and you can find her at authorkmedder.com. That's authorkmeador.com.
Riveting talk radio.
Everybody get up.
People cannot get away from the internet.
Well, I think it probably comes from porn as well. You know what I mean? That's got to be a big, strong thing.
Oh, that's gross. That's disgusting.
It freaks me out.
My cheeks are sealed.
We love talk radio.
Bend over, baby.
Do you see what I'm saying?
WeirdTalkSuperstation.com.
Better than sex.
I don't know how good sex is.
We're going to do a lot of drinking.
Talk radio. Bend over, baby. That was great.
Brewtown Sports is your source for Brewers news and notes. Join Mr. Brewtown as he keeps you up to date on all the happenings of your Milwaukee Brewers and Major League Baseball. Follow the show on Facebook and Twitter, Brewtown Sports. Listen 24/7 at BrewtownSports.podomatic.com.
Hi, this is Phil Naessens from This Week in Tennis and the Phil Naessens Show. Max Sports Channels offers the best in sports talk radio, as well as great music 24 hours a day. It's my daily destination, and I hope it's yours. The sports talk begins each and every day at 3 p.m. and ends around 9 p.m. Special programming on the weekends, and in between all that, the hottest music on the internet. That's Max Sports Channels. Make it your daily destination.
You're listening to AFR, the Armed Forces Radio Network.
And now, back to the Phil Naessens Show.
What a dope. What a maroon.
What is this? What's going on here? What are you people doing here?
Welcome back to the Phil Naessens Show. The fantasy basketball season is slowly winding down, and we have the longest week on the schedule. It's actually 2 weeks, or a half a week here and a half a week there. and here to talk all about that and more. Please welcome from rotowire.com, their NBA editor, Kyle McKeown is in the house. Kyle, how you doing, man? Welcome to the show.
Doing pretty good, Phil. We got the news down this morning on Sunday morning that Mo Cheeks was fired by the Pistons, so it's got me a little bit happy. Don't like to see somebody lose their job, but those are guaranteed contracts. So people who kind of like get all uproarious about how can you be happy that this guy got fired or whatever, it's like, well, I root for the team. He's not doing things that I think need to be done, and he's still going to get his money. So I'm really, really happy that Mo Cheeks is getting fired.
All right. You know what? That's Josh Smith's third coach that's been fired in his history as an NBA player.
Are you blaming Josh Smith for the fire?
I think I will, yes. I'm not a fan of the coach killer.
I don't want to label him that. I think the biggest reason Mo Cheeks got fired is because he was unwilling to try and do something different with that starting front court. And yes, Josh Smith has something to do with that, but if you're going to blame Josh Smith for it, then you're starting to blame their GM, Joe Dumars. And I know that Joe Dumars gets a lot of flack and whatnot, but I still like the Josh Smith signing. The problem with it is that with Josh Smith there, you need Josh Smith to play power forward, and they've already got Greg Monroe there. They don't know what they're going to do with him perceivably because Greg Monroe is going to be a restricted free agent next offseason. He's the kind of player who could demand top dollar, top level money from teams. So just because he's a big man and he's very skilled offensively. However, if the Pistons are going to work this season, if you're going to see them be good, if you're going to see whichever coach gets put into that head coaching spot, turn them into a team that is going to charge back into the playoff spot and not just be some team that kind of ekes into the playoffs, but be a team that can actually put a little bit of fear into some of those top level teams during the playoffs. If you're going to see that, I think they have to move Greg Monroe to a bench role or they have to trade him. And the easiest thing to do today is to just move Greg Monroe into a bench role. And the biggest fear, I think, from the Pistons' point of view, as far as doing that early in the season was, well, what if that affects Greg Monroe's trade value? Because right now, based on his talent level and things like that, he could be a really big trade piece for us that could net us something to help us win this year. Unfortunately, moving him to the bench, I think there's some fear that would mute his trade value. I don't know what your take is on the situation, but that's kind of where I'm coming from on it all.
I'm trading Greg Monroe.
Thank you.
He's valuable.
Right.
I like him a lot, in fact. I was very high on him, as you remember, at the beginning of the season. I thought he was going to be a fantastic fantasy option, and for the most part, he's been okay. But the Pistons, yeah, geez. They put together this team. These Brandon Jennings and Josh Smith have not ever been necessarily known as team players, and they've been kind of branded as disruptions in the locker room and what have you. So it was a tough job all the way around. I'll tell you another coach who probably by the time this recording hits will get fired. Because these have fantasy implications too, and Kyle and I never get to do this. We do this off air, but we never do this on air. Is the New York Knicks Mike Woodson? You didn't see? You were too busy at RotoWire to read my blog on Friday, where I just ripped him and the Knicks. What do you think about Woodson? Is he going to survive?
It's weird, are they going to be better without Woodson? I think in some respects you might see that. In other respects, you just look at the players they have on their roster, and it's hard to envision a Knicks team that's going to be better than a 7th or 8th seed in the East right now. I mean, is Carmelo amazing in certain respects? Sure, he's great on the offensive side. You don't see the same commitment to defense. Tyson Chandler makes them a great team, but the way that Raymond Felton has played this season, it's really hard to see that team being good when you have a point guard leading your team who is seemingly just disconnected from what is important for the team, what the team needs to do to be effective. And then you've got too many one-way players. Iman Shumpert mainly is regarded for his defense. Struggles on the offensive end. J.R. Smith, mainly regarded for his offense, struggles on the defensive end. We don't really know what Tim Hardaway is going to be going forward, things like that. there's too much uncertainty with this team, and I don't think that it all is connected to Mike Woodson. But if you're looking for some kind of fix, and maybe it is just a mentality, maybe it's just creating a situation where Raymond Felton finally has a coach that he believes in or something along that line, maybe bringing in a new coach is what would fix them, or at least make them more competitive and fun to watch this year.
Yeah, they've been a disaster to watch this year, man. I kind of wipe my hands of them, because I have limited time to watch. And if I'm going to watch games, I'm going to watch the team that's actually going to play. But you hit the nail on the head with Raymond Felton, and you were right. Too many one-way players. But I'll tell you something, man. You made a great call a couple weeks ago. You didn't say this on air. You told me this off air when we recommended him. Kendall Marshall. You want to talk about a guy who dropped like a rock. Oh, my God. He dropped like 50% in one day.
It's really tough because the Lakers brought back Steve Nash this week from the back issues that have kept Nash out of the lineup all season for the most part. And they brought back Steve Blake. They brought back Jordan Farmar. These are 3 point guards who were on their roster to start the season, who were in, these are all good players. And then they all had injuries. Xavier Henry had an injury. Kobe Bryant has an injury. And the Lakers got to the point where they needed to reach into the D League to get somebody to play point guard for them. Kendall Marshall comes out, is averaging over 12 assists per game in all the games that he played there for about a month for the Lakers. But now that they're healthy, healthier in the guard situation, the Lakers now don't need Kendall Marshall as much. So that guy who was providing fourth or fifth round value for teams there for about a month, he's now relegated to being a deep league option. And that's the one thing that's been hard to say about Kendall Marshall is he's getting dropped in a lot of leagues, but you go and you look at the production he's put up so far in coming off the bench, he's still capable of putting up some pretty good stats. I think in the Lakers' last game with both Steve Nash and Steve Blake playing, he still got 10 assists off the bench. So if you are desperate for assists, you still might be able to hang on to Kendall Marshall in deeper leagues as long as Marshall's getting about 20 minutes per game. Now, the thing is that becomes something that you need to keep a really close eye on, and you're probably going to have to make a tough decision about. And ultimately, I usually like to go with the higher upside guys. We talk about the fact that minutes are the most important stat in fantasy, and that's going to be the hardest stat for Kendall Marshall to come by right now is those minutes. So from that perspective, I'm willing to drop Kendall Marshall in most 10 and 12 team leagues if there's somebody worth adding right now. If there's nobody worth adding who I think is going to give me more potential production than Marshall will, even in limited minutes, then I'm not going to drop him. So it's a tough call for people, but I know there's some leagues I've dropped him in, and there's some where there wasn't somebody good enough available on the waiver wire for me to go and pick up. What have you been doing with him, Phil?
I kept him. I only had him in one of my leagues. Because I'm pretty set at the point guard in all of them, because I'm a pretty point guard centric, I suppose. But in the one league that I had, I kept him, and the reason I kept him is because I don't trust Steve Nash, and I don't trust Steve Blake. I like Steve Blake; he's a tough kid, and Steve Nash, he was a fantasy stalwart of mine for years. But what did Nash do? He came out, he scored 19 points, and then the next night he sat. And I think that's what you're going to see is you're going to see this back and forth, play, sit, until he gets sore again. And I got this funny feeling that same thing is going to happen. And Steve Blake's a kamikaze. That's the way he plays. And he jacked it up, man. 67% in like 3 days. It was an incredible move. I haven't seen a move like that in a while. But he's another one. He's just a kamikaze, and he gets hurt. And he's trying to do everything there because for years he's been like the scapegoat, the whipping boy, and now he's got the opportunity to do things, and he's going after it real hard, and I have this bad feeling. That's why I kept Marshall on that one team, because he does get me assists as long as he stays at 20. If he falls below 20 minutes, I have to part ways with him.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I'm looking at it. I'm keeping an eye on it. With that Steve Nash situation, we don't really know what his minutes are going to be going forward. Initially, in that first game back last Tuesday, they said that he was only going to play about somewhere between 10 and 16 minutes. He ends up playing 25 minutes. We see Nash play, but then they don't play him on that second game of a back-to-back. So like you're pointing out, when you see the Lakers schedule coming up and there's back-to-backs, you're probably going to see Steve Nash sitting out one. So if you see 4 games in a given week, and 2 of those games both have back-to-backs, then you're probably only getting 2 games out of Steve Nash. So if you're playing in a league that allows you to make daily moves, you might be able to do a kind of savvy, I'm going to drop Marshall here, anticipating that he'll be available off waivers by the time this game rolls around. Maybe I can pick him up, do that kind of thing. Then again, you kind of have to know that with that comes the risk of someone else picking up Marshall and just stashing them on their team. So it's definitely a tough situation, and it's not often that you see a player who puts up 4th or 5th round value and then is the next day pretty much droppable in fantasy.
Exactly. And the other thing, too, with the Lakers is Meeks is out for a couple weeks. Shaggy P's out for who knows how long. So there's room for Marshall still.
Yeah, absolutely. When we're doing our minutes projections on our daily projections on RotoWire, I definitely am finding myself looking at the situation right there. And even if Jordan Farmar's healthy, because Farmar's missed the last 2 games for the Lakers, or at least the last 1 game, you're just looking at it and you're going, they literally don't have any choice but to play Kendall Marshall quite a few minutes. And it's awkward to see that they're playing Kendall Marshall kind of in kind with Steve Nash or Steve Blake, because those guys are point guards. But Steve Blake has kind of been pushed into being a shooting guard for a good deal of his career due to the fact that he's always played next to other ball handlers. So you're confident that while Marshall's able to get in there and play minutes next to Steve Blake, he's still going to have the ball in his hands at time and be able to distribute. Overall, though, this whole point guard situation with the Lakers is very interesting, because in the game where Farmar comes back, I believe Farmar had 8 assists. In the game, and we saw Steve Blake have a triple-double in that game with 15 assists. There's a lot of ball movement now that you don't have Kobe Bryant in there, you don't have Pau Gasol in there. You really have the most prototypical Mike D'Antoni offense in that there's no one go-to guy. They just have a lot of sharing, a lot of movement, and a lot of spreading the floor, and it's opening up production for pretty much anybody who's in the lineup there for the Lakers. Wesley Johnson has been amazing the last 3 games with all these injuries and, the fact that Pau Gasol's out and things like that. Wesley Johnson probably needs to be added in a lot of leagues. And if you're looking for someone to drop Kendall Marshall for, I think Wesley Johnson would be a good add right now. He's not somebody I would have ever thought I was going to be recommending at the beginning of the season, but he's just in a really great situation there with the Lakers right now.
Oh, yes, he is. Great call, too, because I've been keeping my eye this week on Wesley. And Wesley, he had 15 against Minnesota, and he had 9 boards, 20 points against Cleveland, 3 boards, 17 points, 3 blocks against Philly. Great pickup there. And the sky's the limit, because these guys flourish in a system like D'Antoni's, because it's not complicated. And they can step in, and they can fill roles, and they can do their thing. I think that's a great pickup. Wesley Johnson, you're right, might be better than Kendall Marshall. He might even be better than Shaggy P. I hate to say it.
Yeah, just because of the kind of diverse stats that he can put up, the fact that he's going out there right now and getting rebounds above what we would usually suspect from him. And that's, Wesley Johnson has been kind of thrown into that shooting guard role a lot of his career, but with the Lakers' lack of healthy bodies in the front court, you're seeing Wesley Johnson get a lot of time at small forward. That puts him closer to the basket some. And then there's even some minor instances where you might see Wesley Johnson get minutes at the power forward slot, playing a kind of stretch power forward spot, position. So from those perspectives, he's just in a lot better position to get more stats and be more of use in fantasy right now.
Absolutely, and that's what we look for in fantasy. In this short week, short week here and a short week there, it should be interesting. Next week, we'll give them a more thorough injury report. We'll know things. Russell Westbrook probably will be back. Chris Paul might be back, but we're recording before his game. Anyway, great stuff tonight, Kyle. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks a lot for having me on, Phil. I always love doing this.
All right, that's Kyle McKeown. You can find him over at rotowire.com or on Twitter at RotoWire NBA Kyle. And I suggest you get over to RotoWire and subscribe. I pump it on my baseball show every week. I pump it here. You can't beat it. Anyway, coming up next, Kevin Lipe and I will be talking about the Memphis Grizzlies, and we'll be right back. You're listening to The Phil Naessens Show.
The The Phil Naessens Show will return.
And it's the reason Al Gore invented the Internet.
After these brief messages.
Hi, this is Phil Naessens from This Week in Tennis and The Phil Naessens Show. Max Sports Channels offers the best in sports talk radio, as well as great music 24 hours a day. It's my daily destination, and I hope it's yours. The sports talk begins each and every day at 3 p.m. and ends around 9 p.m. Special programming on the weekends. And in between all that, the hottest music on the internet. That's Max Sports Channels. Make it your daily destination.
Hi, this is Gary Mack of Mets Musings, and I hope you'll join me each and every week as I recap all of the comings and goings on in New York Mets baseball. I'll have guests on from all across Mets Nation, giving their insights and analysis on the New York Mets. And you can follow me on Twitter at Mets Musings 1, as well as on Facebook. The group name is Mets Musings. So tune in weekly to the Mets Musings, available at MetsMusings.com, Stitcher.com, iTunes.com, iHeartRadio, and of course, BaseballTalkRadio.com, the home of great baseball talk shows.
Riveting talk radio.
People cannot get away from the internet.
Well, I think it probably comes from porn as well. You know what I mean? That's got to be a big, strong thing.
Oh, that's gross. That's disgusting.
It freaks me out.
My cheeks are sealed.
We love talk radio.
Bend over, baby.
Do you see what I'm saying?
WeirdTalkSuperstation.com.
Better than sex.
I don't know how good sex is.
We're going to do a lot of drinking.
Jog radio. Bend over, baby. That was great.
Are you a fan of historical fiction? If you are, then why not try author Mary Ann Bernal's The Briton and the Dane series of historical fiction novels. You can purchase these novels from her website at www.mariannebernal.com. That's www.mariannebernal.com.
Do you know your fantasy sports? Would you like to make money at it? DraftStreet.com and the Phil Naessens Show would like to help you get started making money playing fantasy sports today. And we'll even give you the chance to get started making money today for free. On me. That's right. All you have to do is head on over to PhilNaessens.com or visit the show notes for this show. Click the Draft Street image at the top of the page and start making money playing fantasy sports at DraftStreet.com today.
You're listening to AFR, the Armed Forces Radio Network.
And now, back to the Phil Naessens Show.
Now here it is, your moment of zen.
Welcome back to the Phil Naessens Show. The Memphis Grizzlies, you remember what I said last week. 4-0? No, didn't happen quite the way I thought it would. They are, or were, 1-3 this week. But we have some bright spots to talk about, and that's what we're going to look for, some bright spots. And joining me now to do just that, from MemphisFlyer.com/BeyondTheArc, please welcome their reporter, Kevin Lipe, to the Phil Naessens Show. Kevin, how you doing, man? Welcome to the show.
Oh, I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm wrapping up a long, long night, and I'm going to be home before the sun comes up, I hope.
Yeah, well, at least you didn't have to sit through the Cavs game.
No, and I was kind of disappointed because I really worked hard today. I did my fantasy baseball show. I wrote my fantasy article. I recorded the fantasy basketball portion prior so I could watch this game, and I was going to watch a little bit of Indiana game so I can actually say, hey, I looked at this before the show, instead of downloading it later. and the stream went down, and I guess I'm pretty lucky.
Yeah, it was not the most entertaining game of the season so far. Just ugly on both ends, and man, they miss Mike Conley. Offensively, there's just nothing happening coherent. So they miss Mike Conley on that end of the floor. Marc Gasol is just not right yet. He was playing really well when he came back, and it looks like he's kind of regressed a little bit. I don't know. I think he just doesn't trust the knee. That's what it looks like. His body is not supporting him in doing the things that he used to be able to do without thinking. He's just not. He's probably like 70-75% is what he looks like to me. He looks like he came back too early, honestly. And those are your two best players, and so it's kind of hard to make any judgments about what's going on since both of those guys are not contributing at the level that they would like to be. So it's been a rough week, and tonight was just kind of the exclamation point on kind of where the Grizzlies are at right now without Mike Conley.
Yeah, it's funny that we never really notice the little things when teams are winning, like Gasol maybe not being 100%,
right,
or not trusting his knee. Man, it did look pretty obvious this week, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean every game, he just doesn't look right to me.
Well, I don't like that at all, but I'll tell you who looked right and who's looked right is Nick Calathes.
Yeah, he had a great game tonight. Kind of another great game in a series of great games. He was 7 of 9 from the floor, 17 points. He had 6 assists and 5 rebounds, and obviously he kind of had some bad moves down the stretch. He airballed 3 that he kind of had to rush a little bit, but I think that his play has really proven that he has the capability to be the guy that everyone kind of expected him to be when he first signed with the Grizzlies. I'm not saying he's going to play at this level forever, but he's certainly showing that he has that capability. He can do it, and if this is kind of a gear that he has that he can hit when Conley is back and Calathes is coming off the bench, then that's going to make him the best backup point guard the Grizzlies have had in years. So it's been really encouraging to see this out of Calathes.
Absolutely it has. That's what we talked about this summer. I thought that was a great pickup. And I think it's all about knowing you're going to play and just being able to go out there and do it. I like I said before, or maybe I said it on the Grizzly Bear Blues show when I was a guest, is that this kid's probably never sat the bench this much ever in his life. So, he has to go out there and adjust, and it's not easy sometimes, I think.
No, but, for sure.
He's done a fantastic job, and I was tweeting with the one of the reporters from NBA.gr, and I said, Nick blew it up tonight, and he said, blew it, because he missed a 3. I said, no, man, I've been on his bandwagon all year. I'm probably one of the few, but it's all good. He's played well. When you look back at this week, Kevin, what do you see as the biggest issue facing the Grizzlies as they head into the trade deadline?
It's kind of hard to extrapolate from this week specifically because this is kind of the week without Conley, but the small forward spot is still a train wreck. Tayshaun Prince he's not terrible, I guess, but he's not really giving you anything, especially on the offensive end. He had 7 points tonight, but that was on 6 shots, and he's just not. He's this year he's so injured, and his conditioning was so hurt by the illness that he had in the preseason that he's not Tayshaun Prince this year. He's just not giving you what you want to get from him, and I don't really know why more people aren't talking about this, but Mike Miller has been a disaster just all year long. He played 20 minutes tonight. He didn't make a shot. He had 2 rebounds, 2 assists. I mean, that's too many minutes for one thing, but it's really too many minutes if he's not doing anything. I mean, that signing to me looks like it is certainly not going to be, the cure-all that people were talking about it being when they picked him up. The talk was, oh, they finally got some outside shooting. Well, not really. People have to guard him because he might make the shot, but if he keeps not making the shot, he's not going to be guarded anymore. And it's not going to help. So if Mike Miller is going to play 20 minutes and put up that kind of a box score, I mean, yeah, that's another bad small forward, and on a team that can't afford to have any more bad small forwards. So to me, that's the biggest hole in the lineup. That's what they need to get. There was kind of some rumors going around earlier in the week about a potential Ed Davis for Harrison Barnes kind of deal. I'm not sure. I don't have any idea why Golden State would do that deal, but to see that kind of a deal be talked about, I definitely think small forward is where they need the most help.
Yeah, they have two small forwards too many that can't get her done anymore, it seems.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's weird though when you see Miller. He's still shooting 42% from beyond the arc, but still, he's not hitting the big shot that they paid him to do. And I'm not so sure he's going to. I mean, they're talking about the playoffs, and he's geared for the playoffs, but you have to get to the playoffs. And unfortunately, he ain't getting it done, and Tayshaun's not getting it done either. Now, Ed Davis is kind of another one who's gotten a little bit lost, and the reason is the success of James Johnson. What a pickup that was.
Well, Johnson was great tonight. He scored 13 straight points. Pretty much single-handedly got the Grizzlies back in the game. And then it was like as soon as he finished that, he turned terrible. He had all kinds of bad plays on defense, taking bad shots. I mean, I really like James Johnson. I really like his game. I really think he was a good addition. But he's got to figure out how to play within himself. He kind of gets a head of steam built up, and then he just kind of barrels over whatever the game plan is and does his own thing. I guess it's kind of a trick or treat thing, just like with Tony Allen. You have to take the bad to get the good from him.
He's still a young fellow, though. He's 26. Yeah. I guess he's young. But, sheesh. I'll tell you what. What is this going to do for the playoffs? Because when I was sitting here thinking about it, and I was tweeting with Joe Mullinax like I usually do during the games, and you occasionally, but I usually try to leave you alone because you're working. But honestly, what does this do to the playoffs? Because this 1-3 this week, and I know there's a lot of basketball left, but you have to make hay while the sun shines, and this was a pretty good week to do that, right?
Yeah, it was. To me, the one that hurts the most is the Mavericks game on Wednesday night, where they not only got beaten by 14 points, and they looked like they didn't even want to be in the building while it was happening. Like, that was a huge game against the team you're directly behind in the standings. At home, you haven't beaten them yet this year. You were only down 5 at halftime. And honestly, Jaeger got his lunch money taken by Rick Carlisle in that game. I mean, and he admitted as much in the press conference after the game. He just didn't have the Grizzlies defense ready to defend kind of the multiple pick and roll looks that Dallas likes to do. And they got bushwhacked. I mean, I don't know any other way to put it that you can put on the radio. They just got run out of their own building. They looked like they didn't even want to be there. To me, that was the game out of all these weeks. If you go 1-3 this week, it would have been fine if the one that you won was the Dallas game, and they couldn't do it. They just didn't. They didn't get it done. They didn't execute. They weren't ready. And to me, that's the one that hurts the most, because that's the team that you're fighting with for the 8th spot, and you gave them 2 games up on you by not showing up to play on Wednesday night. The rest of these games are important too, but to me that one was the one that hurt the most.
Yeah, that was a tough one. I remember we talked about this last Monday. The keys to the Oklahoma City and Dallas games was Zach Randolph and Marc Gasol. And when Samuel Dellenbert, and no offense to him, but when he's yanking 10 boards down in a basketball game that's played by other NBA players and not like a Pop-A-Shot game or on NBA K3 or whatever, or a video game, something's not right. And those boys didn't come up to play, did they?
No, and the Dallas game was just, to me, that was just coaching. A lot of it was coaching. Dallas was running a lot of the lineups they put out meant that the Grizzlies had to cover Dirk with a big. And I mean, how long have we been watching Dirk Nowitzki? You can't cover him with Marc Gasol. You just can't. You can't bring Marc Gasol that far out. And he really made the Grizzlies pay. And they weren't ready. They didn't have the defensive schemes down that they needed to beat Dallas.
Nope, they sure didn't. And I thought they would hand Dallas their lunch, but unfortunately, Jaeger got outcoached. And the Oklahoma City game, that was close. I mean, I think Oklahoma City has matured a lot.
Yeah, I mean that one was more of a, both teams played good defense, and the Grizzlies just didn't have enough offense. That's how I read that game. To me, that out of all these games this week, that's the one where Mike Conley has been missed the most, because there wasn't any scoring. With 77 points in a game, I think that's the lowest the Grizzlies have been held to all year long. When was the last time an NBA game had somebody in the 70s for the Grizzlies? Except this week, I guess. I think that the scores that you're seeing this week indicate how badly the Grizzlies offense misses Mike Conley. You've had a 77-point game. You've had a 79-point game. And now what did they have tonight? 83 in overtime or something? Scored 5 points in overtime tonight. So, I'm not as upset about the Oklahoma City game because they showed up to play. I'm pretty bothered still by what the Dallas game kind of showed us about where this team is at. Mike Conley or no Mike Conley.
Yeah, that was pretty rough. There's no doubt about that. And you're right. When Gasol was out, this team scored a few games in the hundreds. I mean, they were really rocking and rolling because Mike Conley was freelancing and doing his thing. But there's a big hole without him in the lineup. There's no question. And this week, 2 games, another back-to-backer. Washington, Orlando. Tuesday night, Washington. Wednesday night at Orlando. Orlando's fresh off of beating Indiana, and Washington are no joke. What are you thinking about a minute and a half of the keys to those games?
Washington is coming into town pretty hot. We saw last year, I think, was the Grizzlies went to Washington on a Tuesday night, and John Wall hung 40 on them or something. So, containing John Wall, especially without Mike Conley out there to get in front of him, is going to be really tough. And I think that's really the key. Don't let John Wall beat you by himself, because he can. These are 2 games that you just kind of have to hope that the Grizzlies come out and are able to impose their will on what's going on, and really just kind of say, okay, we don't have Mike Conley, but we can play defense still. We're going to have to just slow you down and wear you out from inside out. If they can't do that, which they didn't do tonight, if they can't do that, they're going to lose. Hopefully Conley will be back for the Washington game. I think that's kind of the word on the street, is that's when he's trying to come back. But it'll be a game time decision. So hopefully he can get the treatment that he needs and, be feeling good by Tuesday night, because that would be huge if he's out there, even 80-85% Mike Conley, to slow John Wall, because, Calathes is not the quickest guy in the world. So that's going to be a tough matchup for him.
Absolutely. And I'm not even going to make any predictions because I just jinxed them when I do. Kevin, great stuff today. Thank you so much for being on the show. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, man. Anytime.
All right. That was Kevin Lipe. You can find him at memphisflyer.com/beyondthearc. And that's going to wrap it up for today's Phil Naessens Show. I want to thank all my guests for making this an amazing NBA program. Tomorrow night, Omar will be in the house. Watch out. That show's off the hook. Until then, you all take care of yourselves. And you be good. And we'll see you tomorrow.
Ladies and gentlemen, my mother thanks you. My father thanks you. My sister thanks you. And I thank you.
You just listened to a pre-recorded edition of the Phil Naessens Show. Like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at FlashTennis31. Thanks for listening, and see you tomorrow.